So each of you have a copy of his biography here. He's a graduate of the Citadel, which is a great school, and you can read the other things on it. All I want to say is that he's very knowledgeable of what's going on today in the world, and he's also, you're going to find out, knowledgeable about Christianity, what Christianity had in citizenship with the founding of this country and our government originally. So Mark, if you'd like to come up here, let's give him a big round of applause.
Thank you. I'm going to do something today that I never do, and that is talk to a microphone. But I'm doing it because it's being recorded and I want to make sure the message gets out. So I'm going to have to use a mic, and I never use a mic. So I may look a little strange up here. First of all, can I say thank you to you? And I'm talking about every individual in this room. And I want to thank you. My wife and I and 2 sons have a combined 40 years of active military service. And it's not for me to be applauded. It's for me to say thank you for doing why we served. We served so that Americans can govern themselves. And you're here doing that. And if you look at how many empty seats there are, and I'm not talking about the folks that usually come. I'm talking about the ones that never come. I'm talking about the people that they're taking it for granted that they're going to be able to live the way they did a week ago. And I got news for you guys. If you're watching what's happening in this country, you can't bet on that. If you don't get active now, right now, you're going to miss the boat. Because things are happening in this country that never happened before, going in a direction we have no control over. And there's only one person that's going to be able to change this, and that's Christ and God. We can help him, and we can be the instruments of that. But we can't do it. I'm really happy that you did come today. And I know the topic, Christianity and American citizenship, think to yourself, I'm not asking for you to say anything, but I'm asking you to think in your own mind, how many times have you actually heard a person get up in front of you and speak to that topic? And I'll bet you most of you will say 0. Because I spent 15 years of my life professionally, I got paid to be a politician. I never heard anybody speak to this topic. And prior to that, like you, I was volunteers or in civic organizations and working, and I have never in my life, in 60 years, and I can say that now, I had my birthday last week, I have never in 60 years heard anybody speak to American citizenship and Christianity. Now, to do this and to speak to you, I need some help from you. I need you to understand that we're going to be talking about something that you may never have considered before, and something that I have never spoken to before. And so there's going to be mistakes, or there's going to be questions. It's just not going to be like a usual talk where I'm a cheerleader. I was here 2 years ago and talked to you about the world and America in the 21st century, and everything went great, and that's why I got a revite. Well, I'm hoping I don't do so bad today that you never want to see me again. But we are talking about a topic that I'm on very new ground. We are breaking ice today. And I am praying to God that what you hear isn't my words, but are his words. I'm praying that what it makes you think about is what he wants you to think about. Not what I want you to think about. Not what the Tea Party wants you to think about. Not what conservatives want you to think about. What God wants you to think about. Tim, can you go ahead? We're going to start a discussion in Tyler today that I think is starting to break out all over in America. I'm not the only guy that sees a need to put Christianity into politics. I'm not the only guy to do that. You're going to see through this presentation that I do some fairly big names that are thinking the same thing I am. some of it's me. You know how when you come up to something you've never done before, you've never read about it before, you start having your own ideas, but you start reading other people, and so some of it's going to be my ideas, most of it's going to be God, and a lot of it's going to be from people that you have heard of, but aren't here today. I wish they were instead of me, because they could do it a lot better than I can. Go ahead, Tim. There's a fella, I got to start with this. I'm going to pass this book around. This book right here is what started my journey. And I'm going to pass it to an individual, and I'm going to ask him to pass it, and you keep passing it around. This book is called The Christian Life and Character of the Civil Institutions of the United States. It's 1,000 pages long. It was written and published in 1864. 1864, which happens to be a critical year in the American War for American Civil War. And that author saw the need to create a book that showed how Christ and God were involved in the creation of the United States. And remember, 1864 is before PC time. You didn't have people going through history rewriting it. In that book is an amazing opus, a big story of how America was created from the very beginning until, well, even into almost the time that he wrote it. And he makes a real effort to show you in a variety of ways how Christianity was involved in the creation of this nation. So I wanted to pass that around because, A, it's what started me on this journey. I actually saw it advertised on television, said something to my wife, and she ended up ordering it, and I ended up getting it. And after I got that book, that's what really started me on the journey that puts me standing here before you today. As I looked at that journey, as I looked at it, what I did was I prayed a lot, and I'm going to be honest to you. And I know that politics and church is not the same place, and I know that people sometimes are uncomfortable with that. Sometimes people in political organizations are very uncomfortable with talking like you might talk in church. And I can tell you what, people in church aren't very interested in hearing about politics either. You have people in the church who they're two different things. God's over here and politics is over here. Well, the problem with that is all you have to do is look at our country today, and every problem we face has to do with that problem. That we can't put Christianity in our politics. Well, I got news for you guys. They may shoot me, I may die tonight, but I'm saying it needs to be there. And it needs to be there now. And it needs to start now. But you know what? You won't be if you go and you start working on this like I am on your own little path, you won't be the first person who said that or done it. Because it started with our founders. It started with the people who came to this nation first, and in the 1500s and the 1600s, and it continued through all the way to when George Washington was inaugurated, and you're going to see that today. Now, when I started my journey, I started reading things that we were supposed to read when we were kids, but how many people, you went to school and they told you to read this and you actually read it? Well, if you did, you're a lot better than I am, because I never did. And so now I'm reading all the books that I was told to read that I never read. And maybe that's a good thing, because now I can use what I'm reading. And one of the things I read was called Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville. And if you know a little bit about him, he was born in France, he was an aristocrat, and he came over here in the 1830s to find out, hey, America had a revolution and France had a revolution. America's worked and France's didn't. How come? And Alexis de Tocqueville came on, and he traveled all over the nation. And he spent 9 months trying to find out why America worked and why France didn't work. And that book is, you can get the book that he actually wrote is about 900 pages long. There's an abridged copy out that's about 280 pages. And that's the one I originally read, was the 280. Now I'm going to the 900. I'm reading that one. But he said some very interesting things. Now think about it. You're a person that came over to this country to look at it and to see why is it working and ours isn't working. And then look at what he said. What most people don't realize is you don't know how right that is. You don't know how much God actually used Christianity to create this nation. You know, I was originally born in New York, but I was actually born in foreign territory. I'm Southern by blood. And it makes a difference. It really does. Because if you're born Southern by blood, you know that the history of the Civil War as taught today is not accurate, not even close. It's been rewritten and everybody knows it. Well, if you know that as a Southerner, then you shouldn't be surprised by the other things that have been rewritten. In our case, American history as taught in our public schools, when you talk about from 1492 to 1798, has been the Christianity, the actual glue that made this nation has been completely erased, completely pushed out. You never hear about it. And that's the problem. The problem is everybody thinks America just happened. Like, we became the most powerful, wealthiest country and most successful in human history, and it just kind of happened. God didn't have anything to do with it. They didn't teach me at school about that. And that's a killer mistake. It's killing us. Because the critical central thing that created this nation, we're ignoring. We're pushing it out, and we're saying, no, we can't have that separation of church and state. And this way, that term is so created, had nothing to do with the United States of America. Exactly opposite of why we're here. Next thing, Tim. Now, this is what the Tocqueville... Now, remember, this guy came over to our nation, and he was looking at us, and he was asking questions, and he was trying to see how things worked. And this is what he wrote as a foreign observer of our country. What he said at that time, which is in the 1830s, is that religion is therefore mingled with all habits of a nation, that our belief in God affected everything we did, including vote, including pick candidates, including have policy. Now he saw, that's not an American, that's a foreigner who came over here to find out why things worked. Now I wrote page 140, you know why I wrote page 145? Because if I give you a quote, I want to make sure you can find it. And you can see it and go read it for yourself. So that you know that I'm telling you the truth, that it's not Mark Vogl making it up. That's why the page number is on there. You know the book, it's right there, Democracy in America, that's the page. You read that page, you'll find that statement. Next, please, Tim. What we're going to do today, and I have to be sensitive to your time. As a speaker, I know I can only hold your attention so long. This is a big story. It's bigger than 40 minutes. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to fly at light speed to try to just touch you and plant the seed that you're going to be interested enough to either invite me back or to do your own stuff, to do it somewhere else. Because this is a huge story. Let's start with, Tim, the next one. Let's start with where America is today. Can everybody see this good? I hope. I'm not going to go through each line. But what I'm trying to do is create where America is, you know, so that you can look at that. Because why am I standing here right now? Why am I talking about Christianity and democracy right now, and America right now? I'll tell you, it has to do with what we face right now. One thing, you know, every person I can tell this is a room of people who lived through the Cold War and know what it was. Well, we are back in a situation even more dangerous than the Cold War. If you remember, the Cold War was when we had nuclear weapons pointed at each other. Well, if you look at America today, you might say that it's even more dangerous than that, because it's not, the enemy is no longer across an ocean. and is no longer where we have a technological advantage, and therefore we can hold them off. Now the fight's here in America. Now the fight is about, will we be the nation we were, that we made a covenant with God about, or will we go into history? Is this it? It's over. And if you look at what's going on in the world today, this battle is remember in the Cold War you had the ideology, you had communism against the free world. Now we're in an ideological fight, and this is going to make some people mad, but I can't help it. This is Christianity against Islam. That's what it is. They don't want to say it, but that's what it is. I mean, when you look at what's rising up, when you look at what the threats are, when you look at what's scaring the heck out of people every night, it's Iran getting a nuclear weapon. The same Iran that grabbed our hostages when Carter was president, the same Iran that's behind every terrorist action that's going on in the world, and we're going to let them have nuclear weapons. And you don't think that's more dangerous? And the other thing is, if you're a real Christian, and I'm assuming that there are some in here, maybe there's some that aren't. I am a Christian. I will die for my God. Well, guess what? That's what they're saying in Iran. I'm a Muslim, and I will die for my God. You know what? There's nobody more dangerous than that. Because I don't care if I live tomorrow. If I'm dying for God, I'm dying for the right guy. And I'll go right now. Well, they're thinking the same thing. The problem is they haven't been introduced to Christ. They don't have the right God. So they're killing people or they're dying is to forward somebody else's work, but it's not God's work. Now this opens up a big can of issues in America. An America that we've been told diversity is good. Let me ask the ladies. Did you ever put watermelon in your beef stew? It sounds diverse to me, but you wouldn't do it because it doesn't make any sense. This is a Christian nation. It is, and so to put Muslims in a Christian nation and then have them compete with us doesn't make sense. One side is going to win. I don't hear Muslims saying diversity is great. We love the Christians. So recognize what's going on. Wake up. Next slide, please. In America itself, we have problems in our nation that are driving us, and we, you know, no offense, guys, but we have done the Great Society. We have put trillions of dollars into social welfare programs. We've done all that. It ain't working. And it's not working because the core fundamental principles aren't behind it, and that starts with God. Next slide, please. Okay. This is one of those names that I think everybody's going to know. And, you know, when you're a young guy like me, young at 60, and you're starting on a journey, and you don't know if you're right or wrong, and you don't know if you should do it or not do it, and you ask God to give you a push, tell me what I'm supposed to be doing, and then he throws a comment like this up by Billy Graham, you know you're going in the right direction. You know it's time to keep going. You've been told you're doing the right thing. And Billy Graham actually sees it, and he warned us a long time ago. And he's warning us now in his books. His books are in the bookstores, and you ought to start reading them. Because he's telling us that we need to bring our God back into our country. Next slide, please, Tim. Okay. We're going to get to the point now. You've seen where we are. That's what those slides were for. Now I want to tell you a little bit about the history. And folks, I can't do this. I would talk to you if I had time. It would take me about a week. Seriously, I'm talking about a week, full days, like a college course, to talk to you about 300 years of history, of American history, that would prove to you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that God created this nation. But I don't have that time. So you're going to have to bear with me, and let me give you 2 or 3 examples. Let's start with 1492. Let's start with Columbus. Christopher Columbus. Everybody knows the name. But did you know that he worked for 7 years to get the money to do that journey? Did you know that he went to kings all over Europe to get money to make that journey. Did you know that he lobbied that king and queen of Spain for years to get the money to do it? And they created, like Washington would, they created a committee, they studied it. Heck no, the world is not round, it's flat, just like we'd be told about global warming now. Well, back then they believed in flat worlds, okay? And so the committee said, don't fund Christopher Columbus. You know how he got funded? Tell me if you see this as a coincidence. Islam invades Europe through Turkey and Spain and everything like that. And in Spain, they got all the way up to France. Do you know that the Islam's made it as far as Paris, the gates of Paris? They actually made it to the gates of Paris before they were finally defeated and kicked out of Europe. And it took hundreds of years to do it. Well, when the last city in Spain, which was held by the Muslims, was surrounded by the Spanish, and they were going to take it back, they took the city back. Guess what the first act of the king and queen of Spain was? They hadn't even entered the city yet. They were going to go into the city as the conquering monarchs to take all of Spain back from Islam. Guess what their first act was? Hey, Chris, baby, why don't you come over here and let's talk to you? What had happened was Christopher Columbus had met the priest who had taught the queen of Spain when she was a child. And he told that priest the whole story of how he had worked, what he wanted to do, why he wanted to do it. And the priest said, well, I don't understand. You know, the queen and king should be spending money on you. They should be investing in you. You know why Christopher Columbus actually happened? The king of India, this is a true story. The king of India wanted to know about Christianity and the Catholic faith. So he contacted the Pope, he wrote him a letter, and he said, we really want to know about Christianity, send us some priests. The Pope said, no. But it got around and people found out about it. The king and queen of Spain found out about it, and they decided that they would answer the call to India. That they wanted to find a way to get priests to India to teach what was Catholicism, but let's talk about it, was Christianity. They end up giving Christopher Columbus the money to do his journey. And the evidence for this is so clear. Tonight, go to your computer. Go to Google. Google Christopher Columbus's ship's log. Google Christopher Columbus's ship's log. It will take you to Fordham University. I actually taught at Fordham University. They have Christopher Columbus's ship's log, and they have translated it to English. The very first entry of the log, Christopher Columbus says the purpose of his journey. You know what he says? Does he say commerce? Does he say conquest? He says evangelism. His first journey, the journey that will discover the Western Hemisphere, was to bring Christianity to India. That's why, we got Indians in America. That's why we got Indians. He thought he was going to India. Now, so that's the very first story. What did Christopher Columbus do? What were his first two acts when he landed on the islands here in the Western Hemisphere? The very first act was a prayer to God to thanking him for getting here. The second act was to put a cross up on the beach where they landed. That's the first two acts he did. Now, if that's the beginning of the story, 1492, let's jump to the tail end of the story. Let's go to George Washington's first inauguration as President of the United States. 2 days before Washington is inaugurated President of the United States, the Continental Congress adopts a resolution calling on this nation to thank God for creating this nation. When George Washington steps up in New York City, in Manhattan, to be sworn in, he's sworn in, he gives his inaugural address. What is the first act? The entire body, the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, and every member of Congress, Senate and House, go to church. First thing they do. And they consecrate this land to God. Now, if you didn't know either one of those, you're probably surprised. If you didn't know both of them, surprised might be an understatement. Supposing I could give you 300 years of those surprises, over and over and over again. Would it tell you what the foundation of this nation was? Would it tell you what the people who came here to create this nation were about? You know, there's a story about George Washington that I found totally unbelievable, but I want to tell it to you because people tell me that Christianity can't be involved in politics or it can't be involved in your everyday life. Well, General Washington had his army in Valley Forge, and we all heard of that. We know about Valley Forge. And we know that our army was starving to death. We know that they were living literally in mud huts in the middle of winter. And we know that the future of the United States of America was, nobody could bet one way or another whether it was going to be for real or not. Well, this one individual, and I don't recall his name, but this one individual had been conducting treason against the United States. He had been telling the British all of our secret plans. He'd been telling them things they shouldn't know, and he was caught. He was caught, and he was tried, and he was convicted, and he was to be executed. He was to be killed. A Quaker shows up at Washington's headquarters tent and asks to see the general. And the guy who receives him he's never seen this guy before, and he doesn't know, should I let him in to see the general or not? So he goes in and he talks to George Washington, and George Washington says, yes, I want to see him. And the reason he wanted to see him was the Quakers were running hospitals that were taking care of American soldiers who had either been wounded, got frostbite, or sick, whatever. The Quakers were running the hospitals to take care of. So naturally, he wanted to meet this man because we don't want to do anything that would undo a really good thing they're doing. This Quaker gentleman comes into George Washington and he says, you know the fellow that's supposed to be executed today? And George Washington says, yeah. He goes, I want you to give him a pardon. And George Washington flipped out. He said, there's no way. I can't do it. He says, this guy is giving away our secrets. We're in the middle of a life and death struggle here. How's it going to look to the rest of the nation if somebody that's betrayed us, I cut him loose on a pardon? How's that going to look? I said, I understand if he's a friend of yours. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry about this. I really wish I could do something. And the guy says, the Quaker says to him, he says, friend of mine? He's no friend of mine. He spit on me. He beat me up. He threw a rock through the window of my store. This guy is anything but a friend of mine. And Washington says to the Quaker, well, what are you doing here? He says, why are you asking for this man's life? The guy said to him, because of what Jesus Christ did for me. George Washington gets up from his desk and walks into another room. And when he comes back in, he has a piece of paper. It's the pardon for that man. So who's telling me that Christ isn't allowed in our work? Who's telling me that Christ isn't allowed in our politics? Seems like he got in right there with the most important man to this country that ever lived. That's kind of what we're wrestling with, guys. I wish I could stay with you on the history. I'm telling you, you would not believe what I have found over the past year and a half that I've been doing this. And let me tell you before I go any further, I gave Ashton a bibliography of the books that I've been reading. So your organization has that bibliography. If you want to know where you can find this information, he's got it. If you look on the sheet of paper that I gave you, on that sheet of paper it shows you a link for Christianity and the founding of the nation. If you go to that link, it's on Facebook, that's a page I run, and you go to the files on that page, you click on that, you'll have the bibliography that Ashton has. I'm a little guy, folks. I'm like, you know John the Baptist for Christ. Well, I'm kind of like, before John, I'm kind of the littlest little mouse you can think of running around screaming, we got to do something. This is not about me. I don't care if I walk out the door and die today. If one of you or more than one of you picks up the cross and keeps going, then I did my job. Because this is about a partnership, a covenant between Jesus Christ and this country. That's what it's about. And I know there's a lot of people in politics, they don't want to hear this. I did politics for 15 years. I worked with politicians that got elected over and over and over again. And I can tell you, they don't want Christ at the bargaining table. They don't want him there. If you're a mechanic, if you work on fixing cars, you want all the tools you can have to fix a car. You don't want anything to interrupt what you're doing. You just want to fix the car. Well, if you're a politician, you want to make deals. That's what you do. That's why you got elected. Make a deal. The problem is you put Christ in there, that's a whole other thing now. That adds a whole bunch of things that if he's not there, you don't have to deal with. But if he is there, he can flat stop deals. Won't be no deals. How do you have a deal on abortion? You can't have a deal on abortion. They die or they live. One or the other. Pick a choice. Which side is Christ on? Now, if he's at the bargaining table, we ain't going to have a deal. There's only going to be one way out. And that's why I'm saying this thing is bigger. We have 50 million dead kids because of abortion. Whether you like that or not, I can't help it. That's a fact. Next, please, Tim. It's not going. Okay. I wanted to put up, you probably can't see it, but I wanted to put up the Mayflower Compact because the Mayflower Compact is an important thing and I want you to see it. This is the very first governing document in the United States of America, and it was written by people just like you, sitting around just like you. Remember, these are the pilgrims, and they're trying to figure out, we're going to land on this country, and we got to run ourselves. We have to be the government. We're it. Ain't no government. We're it. So we need an agreement. How are we going to treat each other? What are we going to do? Now, I bet every person in this room heard the term Mayflower Compact. But I will also bet that about 90% of the people in this room never read it, including me. I never read it until I started on this journey. Then I actually read the Mayflower Compact. You know, it's only 2 paragraphs. You know how many times the word God is mentioned in 2 paragraphs? And Christianity is mentioned once. That's in a governing document, the first governing document. And when they did that, you know, when I grew up, maybe you're smarter than I, probably are smarter than I was pretty stupid. But I thought that the ship that came over that brought the pilgrims, the Mayflower, I thought they were all pilgrims. Turns out, no, only half of them were pilgrims. The other half were called strangers. They weren't Christians, or they might have been Christians. But their religious faith didn't dominate who they were, didn't create who they were. So consider them just regular folks. Half the people that signed the Mayflower Compact were not announced Christians, were not pilgrims. But they signed a document that was going to set the rules for how they lived, and God's mentioned 4 times. So, seems to me like that's a pretty good plan, whether you're a Christian or not, since they did that, and look what it blossomed into. Next, please. Now I want to talk about educating. Guys, Ashton, I'm going to get in trouble because I don't know how long I'm supposed to be here, but I got a little more to go yet. So you're going to have to put the cane on me if I go too long. One of the big things that's really killed this country, in my view, my opinion, just me, is I remember as a kid going to school and there was prayer in school. I absolutely remember it. There ain't now, and that's wrong. And it's not, and the Supreme Court is the one that undid it. And let me tell you something, if I had a choice, if there was one place that I could completely replace, that would be it. Those people are out of their minds. They have lost it. And probably when they went to law school. Because if they went to church instead of law school, they'd be better judges than they are now. And I'm telling you, if you look at our education, if you look at American education from the very, very, very beginning, you know what the first property tax in America said? The very first one said, I'm going to tax your property to build a school, to teach kids to read, so they can read the Bible. That's what the bill said. It said so they can read the Bible. It wasn't so they could read Playboy magazine or Sports Illustrated. It was so they could read the Bible. That's what the first property tax said. You know what the old deluder Satan law is? That's a law in Massachusetts, one of the first laws in this country about education. And they said in that law, we want you to read so you can read the Bible, because if you can't, Satan's going to be after you. That's why it's called the old deluder Satan law. I mean, it goes on and on, folks. This is like, you wouldn't believe it unless you actually did it. But if you actually read what I read, you just sit there shaking your head over and over and over again, because what we've been told is a lie. It's just a flat-out lie. It's not true. The people who came to this nation to live their faith. And that included having a Bible in school and all the other stuff. What else I got on there? The Northwest Ordinance. This law, Northwest Ordinance, that was a law that was actually passed by the Continental Congress before the Constitution. Remember in your mind, think about the East Coast and how all those states are. And the first place they were looking to settle in was Ohio and Indiana and Illinois. They called that the Northwest. And so once we had won the Revolution, that was our land. They were trying to figure out, well, how do we make states? And that's what the Northwest Ordinance did, is it set the boundaries and the ground rules for how you create a state. If you go in that, and you can actually Google this, the Northwest Ordinance, and look at Section 12, Public Education, it tells you the federal purpose for public education. Morality, religion, and knowledge. That's the way it's listed. It's not listed knowledge, morality, and then religion. It's listed morality, religion, and knowledge. Now, when you make a list, do you put the most important thing at the top or at the bottom? I would tend to put it at the top. And they put it, morality, religion, and knowledge is the reason for public education. It's a stated law. Now, when they went from they wrote that even before there was a Constitution. They wrote that with the Continental Congress. Then they did the Constitution. Guess what law they passed immediately following that? This. Exactly as it was written before they wrote the Constitution. It is the law of the land today. So my problem is I don't understand where these educators are going, because the very basic law says that we have education, public education, to teach morality, religion, and knowledge. Well, where's morality and religion at? I mean, this just isn't making sense. It just, and see, the thing they never knew, folks, is they never knew there would be an internet where I can tell you it's there, I can tell you how to find it, and instead of one person knowing it, every person in this room can read it for themselves. And maybe you get different than I. Maybe you see it different than me. But I see it the way I see it. Next, please. Okay. We were talking about names. And we were talking about people who know there needs to be a change around here. And I'm telling you, there's a book out there by Tony Evans. And he wrote a book called America Turning to God. And I just got this book maybe 3 weeks ago. When Ashton asked me to come here, me and Ashton talked. And I told him what I wanted to talk about. And I got to tell you, I was worried that he might think this is not appropriate for y'all. That politics and Christianity aren't supposed to be in the same room. But I didn't want to come here unless I'm talking about this. And I really thank God and thank Ashton for saying, come on, and giving me the invitation. I think that was a gutsy move. Because, when I walked in, the turnout seemed to be kind of low, and I was thinking, well, maybe people don't want to hear this. This is not a topic anybody's interested in. But I'm telling you as I stand here, that these are the things that's going to make the difference. I'm going to say something way out of line. I mean, I'm going to go so far out of line, you probably throw me out of the room. But 4 years ago when Mitt Romney got nominated, as he got nominated, I vowed I would not vote for him because he wasn't a Christian. Now, I know he's a Mormon, and I know they believe in the Christian Bible, but I also know there's a lot in their faith I don't know about. And no offense, guys, but I want a Christian. I want somebody who says there is a Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. I want somebody who says this is the Bible, the Word of God, that's it. Ain't no extras. This is it. Done deal. That's what I want as a voter. You can tell me every other issue, and that's great. You know, you want to hand me $10 million, great. But I'm not voting for you if you're not a Christian. Now it's time, either we're going to stand up and we're going to do it or we're not. And I'll tell you another thing, and this is another way out here, but should I, you know, it was a couple of weeks ago, it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, that I remember hearing on the radio that 300 or 400 black churches either left the church or whatever because of the gay marriage issue. Because they rejected. Well, God bless them. I'm standing with them, and I'm standing with them. I don't care the color. I don't care what you are. If you're for God and Christ, I'm with you, and that's it. And so when you look at like somebody like Tony Evans, in that book, he'll tell you some of the things we should be doing. Go to the next one, please. I know I'm late, Ashton. I'm going to go as quick as I can. Franklin Graham. This is important. If you have not ever gone to search out Billy Graham, you know, again, Google, look for Billy Graham. They have an active organization going on in North Carolina. Franklin Graham's announcing that for this next election thing, he's going to be in 50 states, and he's going to be talking to us. And this is something that we should all get behind. And it just goes to show you that it's not just a little guy like me. It's not just a little mouse here. There's some people with some pretty heavy sticks coming into the game. And they see it like, I think they see it like I see it, which is, this is it. You know, we better get it. You know, the religious right, I told you I was in politics for 15 years professionally. I got paid to work for them, to get them elected and all that stuff. I know about the religious right. Well, it's time for a new religious right. It's time for a religious right that says, this is it, guys. This is the line. No further. No more compromise. This is it. Here's the line. This is it. You know? And I think Graham's going in that direction. Next one. These are some slides. I know this is the end of it. I just had some slides that talked about, because people would say, well, okay, Mark, maybe it makes some sense, but what are we supposed to do? I mean, what's the next step here? And so what I wanted to do is give you some ideas about how can Christians change politics. And I think the biggest one, because I don't have the time to go through all of these, the biggest one really, and it may not be on this one, but is we need to change the discussion. We need to change we need to make the politically correct. We're the ones that need to define what is politically correct. Politically correct is inside the Bible. If you're not in the Bible, you're politically incorrect, get the heck out. This is it. The Lord, you know, if you're either going there or that's it, we're gone. Now, the problem is going to be people are going to say, well, what if they don't do it? Well, I'll tell you, for the last 3 elections, I've been doing right in my own candidate. I didn't vote for Bush, and I didn't vote for McCain, and I didn't vote for Romney. I'm writing in my own candidate. Well, how about if all Christians had a Christian political convention and picked a candidate? Not by party, the heck with that. We'll pick our own guy and we'll write him in. That's it. Now, I'm not saying this will work, guys, but I'm telling you one thing. If God wants it to work, it's done. Finish the deal, over. Don't even have to run the election, put the guy in office. You know, we're going to have to start playing this game for real. We're going to have to start playing this game like it matters now. You had your time. You had your play time, kids. Now go to bed. Next one, and I should be almost done. I'm really sorry for taking more time maybe than I'm supposed to. I'm almost there.
We got till 1.
But what I'm trying to say is, the reason I did this the way I did it is first I want you to know, not know because you already know, but I just wanted to refocus in your mind the condition of our country. Second, I wanted you to know, if you as an individual goes out and says Christianity should be in our politics, you won't be the second person. You won't be Mark Vogel's friend. You'll be George Washington's friend. You'll be Benjamin Franklin's friend. You know, that's a whole other thing. But I got to tell you, one thing Satan does, and we all know it, is try to deceive us. And there's a whole bunch of stories out there about Benjamin Franklin and other guys that weren't Christians. Invite me back. Give me time. And you'll find that you will be surprised at how Christian these founders were. I guarantee you, I will knock you out of your seat. You won't believe it. You'll say, I got to go check that. Well, good, because I'll give you every way to do it. Because these men believed in what they were doing. Go ahead, let's go to another one. So that might be the end of it. These slides here, I can leave a copy. They'll have these slides, plus they'll be on whatever they're showing. Plus, on my piece of paper I gave you ways to contact me. I'm not trying to be an important person here. I'm really not. I swear to God, I don't want to be an important person. One of you all get all the information, you can be the important person. What I want to do is make sure that I have tickled you enough, that I have gotten to you the word God wanted me to get to you, so that we change this. This ain't right. It's going the wrong way, and there's only one way to flip it around. We can't find an elected official. It's not worth going into all that. You all know the problems with politics. There's only one way to correct this, and it's to go back to the foundation that created this nation, and it's up to God and Jesus to do it. But we're the ones that have to ask for it. They're not going to force it on us. They didn't force it on Israel, and they're not going to force it on us. We're the ones that have to do it. I guess that's it, man.
Evidently, there we go.
You can flip another one. I think there's probably...
If anybody is here today for the first time, if you have a question, if you'll write it on the cards that are on your table, we will ask it. That way we can assure everybody's question gets asked. Have we compartmentalized our lives so much that we will not accept discussion of civic matters at church? How can we reverse the separation trend?
Okay, this one is a ticklish question. And remember, I'm not a minister. I've thought about one of the problems with trying to address this topic is the churches. I'm not in a church. I don't have the challenges of being a pastor or an assistant pastor. I don't have that challenge. All I can ask is for God to help me. And what you might need to do, if you're a church, is set aside something where church-going members can go to a meeting that are church members, but is not part of the church ministry so much as it is a place for people to meet. See, the problem you get into is, supposing I'm your minister, and supposing that I say something that you don't like, you might go to another church. Now, it's real likely I might say something you don't like if we start talking politics. So the problem with it is, on the one hand, see, you have to go back to the beginning of our country. The beginning of our country really was about separation of church and state. It really was in one sense. Today, do you know that today in England, the Queen of England, her husband is the head of the Anglican Church. They're still together. Their church and state is still the same people. Whereas when you came over here, no. You're not going to be the pastor of the First Baptist Church and the mayor of the town. Nope. No. Now, if you're pastor of the First Baptist Church and you want to run for mayor of the town, you can do it if you want to. But it's not because you have a church position that you have a government position, or because you have a government position you have a church position. That's what they were coming from. And our problem, and it really is going to be, this is a senior group. There's a lot of older people there. This is a tough problem. This question is a hard question because it brings right out in the face of everybody the problem of when you try to match these two things together. How do you do it without tearing the church apart? But how do you do it to make it effective and keep Christ in the middle of it? And the only thing I can say is you could have voluntary associations of churchgoers that meet to discuss politics. But you can't tie it directly to the church. You can't say the minister said it or whatever. Because first of all, you would be violating that separation of church and state. And you know what? I say that not from a constitutional standpoint, but from the standpoint of, okay, now I'm going to confess something probably shock you all. I'm Catholic. And I have a priest. And that priest means everything to me in terms of what he is to me for a priest. I don't want to talk to him about, starting a campaign for something. His job is to take care of my soul. That's what I want him to do. His job is to plant Christianity in me, but it's my job to live that Christianity, and that is the voting and all that other stuff. I hope I haven't danced around this too much, but I'm telling you, I gave a lot of thought to this because I do believe in the importance of the church, as a place where you touch God and talk to God and see God and hear God. But I also believe it as a place that you come out of to live life. And one last thing to this. It makes a huge difference. I lived in New York for 20 years, probably, and I was in politics. I was making a lot of money, and I worked for a very important person. I could have been there for another 10 years. But I left it because God wasn't there. They wouldn't let him in. Now, I don't care that I don't make the money. But I'm telling you, the reason I came to East Texas, and this is serious, I'm not saying this because I'm in front of you. I seriously came to East Texas because I can turn the radio station on and I can hear about God on the radio station, and it ain't going to be one station. And it ain't going to just be a religious station. Or I can go in a Walmart, and I could be shopping and talk to somebody about Christ. A person I never even saw before. That's the environment of America. That's where we need to be. Next question.
Tyler ISD is instituting FAN, Faith Action Network.
Great.
Would you like to be involved?
You bet. Okay, next question.
Mr. Vogl, when you say our fight is between Christians and Muslims, people say there are so-called moderate Muslims and we're not to slander them. It seems the problem is that the moderate Muslims are in general afraid of the radical Muslims. Those are who supposedly from the same religion of Islam. Do you concur? And if so, what steps can we take as a result of this ironic situation?
Okay, this question has two different parts. It has Muslims with respect to inside the United States, and then it has Muslims outside that are, in nations and stuff like that. Let me deal with the inside America first. It goes to the border question. For years, during your whole lifetime, we had an immigration policy that allowed more or less 1 million strangers in a year, and they were broken down by different ethnicities and things like that. And so that we knew what we were bringing in. They had to be assimilated. They had to become an American. If they didn't become an American, then they weren't, you go back to your own country. And this open border thing is killing us because we don't know who we're getting or what they believe in, and there's no control on it. The other side of it is you have what I hear on the radio, and I can't confirm this, that they're talking about bringing Syrians into America and all that. Whoa, time out, stop. We got to get a handle on our own problems first, okay? So within America, I would say close the borders, go back to the stated law of this nation as it is, and then you don't have to fear the Muslim thing because it's still containable. You can still watch and see what's going on. With respect to outside the world, I'm not a crusader. I'm not into this, let's go over to Syria and make it Christian or whatever. I'm not into that. If they wanted, the countries are like this country. If you were here for the Cold War talk, you heard me say, we are no longer the leader of the free world. We are one of 200 plus nations. We're a nation like Egypt's a nation, like France is a nation. Let's take care of our own house, number one. And then number two, we should work with people we can work with and work against people who are working against us. It comes down to that. As far as moderate and radical goes, let me just say this, and I thought about this today, and I hope this is what God wants me to say. But the problem is, you only know a radical Muslim by what he says or does. I mean, all the moderate Muslims could be radicals, and we just don't know it yet. Okay, like I told you, I would consider myself a radical Christian. Now, it's not that I'm going to make everybody Christian. Our faith isn't like that. God and Christ say, if you want to be a Christian, you come to me. You make the decision. So I can't force anybody to make that decision. But the Muslim religion appears to be, we can force you. You will be or we'll kill you. If that's actually what their real faith is, then they're all radicals. And they don't need to be in this nation. We are, because the key to Christianity is you want it. You know, or you don't want it. It's up to you. You make the choice. Next.
I think you'll like this one. We study the Bible every Sunday in church. Tyler's own Archbishop Joseph Strickland of East Texas.
Patty, we're going to...
It's the last question.
Okay.
Wants to teach religious freedom and the Constitution in his churches. Do you agree with him? And this is just my blank card I held up there with him.
First of all, he's my bishop, so I absolutely agree with him. And second, I love Bishop Strickland. I wish you all could meet him and spend time with him. I can tell you that the Catholic faith is adamant about exercising citizenship. And it's not just Bishop Strickland. And the previous pope, not this particular pope, but the previous pope wrote an encyclical, which is a faith document from the Pope, it's official, that basically tells us that we are to be active citizens and that we are to live our Christianity in our politics. So I'm 100% for it.